Hello everyone, this is Sakura the Diesel here, and today is going to be a special kind of review. I haven't done a video game review in a long while, and that's mostly because anytime I try to do one, I'm afraid I don't have enough material to bring or say, and I lose interest in the review very quickly. But today I had a little motivation to do another video game where I feel I do have quite a bit to say, and after watching other people playing the games, I want to throw my own thoughts into the mix and share my thoughts on today's series, the Professor Layton series. For almost 15 years, this series has started to grow in popularity. Maybe not as much as other popular story-heavy games like the Ace Attorney series, but it definitely has its fans. To the people that grew up with the games and still hold those fond childhood memories, to newcomers that have played the series because it's a curious little village, or because they've also played the Ace Attorney and felt like they need to play it because of the crossover. Either way, the series is still getting recognition. But like any series that has a strong impact in some way, we always have to ask, does this series still hold up? What is it about the series that fans love? Is the hype and praise worth it? Or is it one of those games where it was fun at the time, but now it's one of those series where it's more fun watching someone else play it rather than playing it yourself? Well, coming from someone that has played the first 3 games quite a few times and seen others trying the series out, I think I have a good enough sum up on what this series is, who's it really for, and if it's still good. So, as such, I'm going to be taking a look at the first 3 games, starting with the one that started it all, Curious Village. So to fully understand and appreciate the Layton series, I'm going to be reviewing these games based on 5 topics, ranging from important to least important. We'll start with the story first, then we're going to move on to the characters, the gameplay and puzzles, the music, and finally, the minigames. I'm going to go in depth with each of these topics as I can, and give my own honest takes on each of them. So, let's get started.
I don't understand, Professor. Why are we going to help solve an inheritance dispute?
When it comes to the Professor Layton series, in order to give the games a little in-depth look, I'm going to have to spoil the story for each of the games, most notably with the twist endings, as that's what the series is known for, as it is a mystery game. So, once I get to the spoil part of the story, I'll make sure to put a time code as to where you can skip ahead, in case you have not played the games and you want to be kept in suspense. With that being said, this game's story is very simple in its mystery, and the twist is even more simple compared to the future games, and that's saying a lot given the series. The only game where the story comes close to being as simple as this is Last Spectre, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. The story centers around a village known as St. Mystere, where an archaeology professor known as Herschel Layton has been called by a widow named Lady Dahlia and asking for his assistance in helping her solve the will after her latest husband, Baron Augustus Reinhold, passed away. Her husband mentions in the will about an inherited treasure known as the Golden Apple, and he's kept it somewhere hidden among the town, and no one knows where it is or what it even looks like. So, with the help of Layton's apprentice, a small boy named Luke Triton, the two set foot into St. Mystere to find clues and gather information about the town to find out more about the village and the treasure. So yeah, like I said, the story for the most part is pretty much straightforward in its objective, but it does a good job in keeping the players interested in the story. I know I was hooked the moment I've played the game, and the story definitely does help. It keeps you engaged, and it does its best to make sure nothing drags on for longer than necessary, and it also throws some surprises your way. So, first spoiler warning coming your way, but during the game you also find out that one of the Baron's family members, Simon, was murdered while you were off bringing Lady Dahlia's cat back. So now not only do you have to find the Golden Apple, but now you have to be on your toes and watch out for any potential danger along your way. You also get to learn about Baron's daughter, Flora, a young girl that apparently left the manor after her father passed away, and no one knows where she might have gone to. They throw a couple of things at you, but they don't let that become a distraction for the main objective, and they even fit together nicely into the main plot that you want to see how it all connects. They give you just enough that you want to keep going and see what's next, as you try to piece together what is actually going on in this village. The only thing I do harp on is that there are some points where the story does drag for a little bit, mostly at the beginning between you finding Claudia or looking for Raymond. I get that it needed some kind of setup or an excuse for the player to explore the town some more, and to be fair, it's only noticeable if you're planning on playing and completing all of the puzzles. It's nothing too bad, but I can see some getting bored with the game because of the beginning part. Now, this is the point where I am going to talk about the twist ending and mystery, so again, here's the time code. Okay, so let's start with the murder subplot first. After finding Claudia and bringing her back to the manor, an inspector named Chumley arrives to inform the professor that Simon was murdered, and the only clue you had to go on was a dog. Then later in the night, while trying to look for Raymond, people in the village have been mentioning about a big tower that's in the center, and how most villagers try to stay away, as they heard that there's an old man that goes around kidnapping the folks if they feel sick or tired. And soon you see the old man putting Raymond away in a big sack. Only later you find him back in the manor, looking as better than ever, and he doesn't remember that he's been kidnapped earlier, and even during the scene you see another cog, the same one Matthew found inside the manor near Simon. So after running around town, gathering as much info and clues as you can, you first find out that the inspector in the manor is not the real Inspector Chelmy. Instead, he's Don Paolo, a person that seems to have a grudge against Layton, which the series and I will talk about later. But he is also in search of the Golden Apple and followed us in here, but he ends up fleeing the manor before we have a chance to capture him. So the first twist is simple, but gives you enough info for you to follow that it doesn't come out of nowhere. Although I wish we've learned about the inspector's wife's name beforehand, but that's just me. The scene is still badass to look at with the pacing and the build-up to the big reveal. It does feel like the story is about to wrap up soon, and it now gives you even more pumped to go to the tower and see what's waiting for you there. Now here's where the real twist comes in. During the course of the game, you find little scraps of notepaper and even read the Baron's journal about his former wife and this town. Upon reading it, you get the feeling that this town is not all it seems to be, and there's something being kept hidden from you. After finally getting and gaining access to the tower, you crash into the basement, in which you see another journal talking about the village, and you see the villagers' faces and some keys on the wall. Once you go up the stairs, you meet the owner of the tower, Bruno, and it's there that you finally learn that the villains are all actually just robots. So personally speaking, when I first found out about the twist, I was a little shocked. But playing through this game again many times and picking up all the hints and clues the game gives you as you progress, again, this is the most simplest twist the series has to offer you, but it's not a bad one. Is it weak? Maybe in terms of what the other games offer you, but even looking back on this game, I don't find it to be that weak. Maybe not as clever in terms of them being subtle about it, but again, being the first game, they need to make sure the audience are not too confused about the reveal, or how did Layton come to that conclusion in the first place, which I feel the next two games kind of fail to do, but I'll get more into that when we get to those games. Again, what I like is that it doesn't come out of nowhere, and I've seen some Let's Players coming to that conclusion a little early on in the game, most notably when they read the Baron's journal about his wife, and how Lady Dahlia looks so much like his former wife. I like that it's possible for people that have played this game when they were younger, or even those that played it for the first time, can get a feeling that they're solving the mystery with Layton, and try to reach the same outcome he is, that it feels rewarding when you do finally get to the truth. But that's not all. Once you learn about the truth of the village and its people, you start climbing the tower, solving more mysteries, and once you finally reach the top of the tower, someone is waiting inside for you. During your first visit to the tower when it was locked, you meet a mysterious girl who seems to know more about the tower. In fact, not only does she live on top of the tower, but you find out that she's the daughter of the Baron, Florin Reinhold, and she is the golden apple the Baron mentioned. You see, the real reason he made out the will was because he was looking for someone as a potential guardian figure for Flora. Now, there are probably many questions flying through your head, and when thinking about his motive, it does bring plenty of flaws. Like first, he had to be extremely lucky that his wife would even bother to call someone like Layton to come over to the village. Not only that, but he also had to be extremely lucky that Layton would even bother to take in and raise the girl after finding out the truth. In fact, why bother making a village filled with robots for her if she's gonna leave the town regardless if she finds a new guardian or not? Why not leave her in Bruno's care until she's old enough? I get that this was also made for her to be happy, but was also to stop someone from finding the actual treasure by pressing a switch under Flora's painting and making off with the goods without knowing that they've stopped the whole town while taking the treasure away. Now, does that mean the story or the game as a whole is bad because of those plot holes? Me personally, no. While the ending may be weak to some, and while there are a couple of moments where the story does drag, it's still engaging as it was when I first played it. It still manages to grab me, even knowing the twist, and playing it again, I start to notice the clues more carefully, that the build-up is still well put together, that, again, you start to see how the writers came to that ending. Plus, this series is known for good endings, and this game is no exception with that bittersweet ending. It still makes me smile to this day. So with that, as their first attempt at a story, I give it a 7 out of 10.
I hope St. Mystere is ready for the famous archaeologist and puzzle-solving detective, Herschel Layton.
Professor Layton, much like Ace Attorney, is a series that is also known for its colorful and variety traits of characters. From designs to characteristics, the team behind the series makes it their goal to make sure every character, no matter how much or how little role they play into the game, is remembered by the player in some way. Let's start with our two main characters, Layton and Luke. Next to Maya and Phoenix, you couldn't get a much better duo with these two. They balance their traits so well that they make for a great team. You got Luke's innocent child-like that tries to be like a gentleman like Layton, but given that he's still a child himself, he's prone in thinking too fast, or he may act a little snarky here and there when it comes to him interacting with other characters. And it's even shown in the first game how much he sticks up for Layton when others talk bad about him. He still has his moments in being a good character, and he does his fair share in solving the mysteries with Layton and helping him with puzzles along the way. There are plenty of good jokes surrounding Luke who tries to make sense of what's going on around him, and I'm pretty sure we're thinking or asking the same questions Luke is asking. Now I know Luke could be a mixed bag for some, and I'll admit some of his traits can be a little overdone. Again, with him thinking too much of a situation or jumping to conclusions without thinking at all. But I find his character to be quite good in this game. The writers have found a good balance of making him childlike, but not an unlikable brat to a certain extent. He makes mistakes, but he's not afraid to apologize if he goes too far, and he can still offer his kindness and assistance to those he deems worthy of receiving. That's where Layton comes in helping his apprentice at becoming a gentleman. Now, I'll admit, in the first game there's not much of a complex character to Layton. He's your typical good role model for children. He's very kind, very patient of others, and he's also very smart to boot. At the same time, he has his own little charm about him that makes him stand out. He really is the kind of guy you want to look up to, due to how calm he could be, especially when they're in a terrible situation. He helps drives the players to wondering more about the mystery as he draws closer in solving it himself, and you want to know and figure out how did he come to that conclusion. He also has plenty of badass moments too that makes you root for this guy, like pointing out the real criminal, or making a fucking hang glider to escape the tower. How did he do that with normal parts? I don't know, and I don't fucking care. That's how badass he is. We'll also see more awesome moments like this in later series, so just get ready. In terms of the other characters, let's start off with the reoccurring ones. And I'm going to say this right now, I didn't like Don Paulo at first. Now in this game, he's okay. He was just a way for the writers to throw in a villain, and he's got some good and funny moments here and there. I do like how hammy he could be at playing the part of being Layton's rival, even though Layton himself didn't really see him as a rival of any sorts, and while I'm glad the game didn't outright forget about him after revealing his trick as the Inspector, I wish he kind of made more of an appearance during the game. Again, there were some standout moments, like him controlling the Ferris wheel so he could run over Layton and Luke, because, sure, why not? I guess the gun would have been too obvious for him. I always felt like he was just there. He was there for the writers to throw in because they needed a villain, and we're going to see this in the second game too. So I can see people easily forgetting about him. But then we get another character. While she also didn't make too many appearances, she had just enough information and screen time to make herself memorable. Flora. At the start of the game, all we ever see of Flora is a painting of her alongside her father. We don't really know if she's still around or if she left the village. But during the 5th chapter, we also start to learn more about her that, again, you start to piece together on how she plays a role in all of this. She's been through a lot in terms of both her parents passing, alongside with trying to deal with Lady Dahlia as a replacement for her original mother, and also learning that the village she grew up with and its people are all just robots. It's no wonder she shut herself from the village and has slowly becoming very shy. Even though her father meant well and wanted to give her the best childhood, she still felt empty inside, so it's no wonder she wanted to live with Layton and move to London with him. Although she still has fond memories of the village itself, as she wants it to stay forever, after learning that if she or the professor touches any of the treasure inside the manor, the village and the robots would stop working forever. There's not much, but there's also just enough to give enough character to this girl. And sadly, that's all we're ever going to get from her. We'll get more into that later. But in this game, she does leave a solid impression. Even the other minor characters, from the ones that play a part of the story, like Bruno, Dahlia, Matthew, to the NPCs that gives you the puzzles like Polly, Archibald, Beatrice, and others, also leave an impression based on their designs and traits. Not one character ever felt like an exact copy of one another, and they even play a bit in the mystery and tying into the story in some way, shape, or form. No matter how many times I played this game, there are a couple of characters I look forward to seeing, and again, that's a good sign right there. I give the characters in this game a 7 out of 10. Since these games are on the DS or mobile phone now for the first 3 games, the Layton series takes the form of a point-and-click adventure game. Basically, if you ever play games like the Humongous series with a mix of Jumpstart and other educational title games, that's basically how the gameplay works in this series. You go around from place to place, click on people or objects to get one or two things. A hint coin, in which there are usually 3 in each locations, to which you can use on a puzzle that you're having trouble solving, or you'll get a puzzle, which is the main driving force of this game. And oh boy, are these puzzles a beast sometimes. Let me state this right now, in that if you're not the type of person that likes solving critical thinking puzzles, or puzzles that may require you to think further or outside the box, then this series is definitely not for you. Now, it's not like all the puzzles are super difficult or too hard to figure out. Some are simple enough to where you can get the answer in no trouble, but even coming from someone that's played the game many times before, I'll admit the wording on some of the puzzles can be confusing to some if they don't stop and read what the puzzle is really asking you to do. For example, in one puzzle they mentioned a horse race and how many laps 3 horses can run in 1 minute, and they want to know how many minutes will pass before the horses will line up at the starting line again. Now, you might be tempted to do a lot of math in order to get the answer, but if you read the puzzle carefully, you'll notice that the answer is a lot more simple than you think. And that's the trick with a couple of those kind of puzzles. One nice thing is that they have a variety of puzzle types, from sliders to multiple choice, rearranging, and so forth. So if you're not good at one type of puzzle, you'll feel pretty smart and confident with a puzzle that you know you're good at. You'll feel that prideful moment when you solve a puzzle all on your own for the first try, because you're confident in your thinking. Then you have your moments where you're overthinking the puzzle when you probably could have made it simpler beforehand, that once you see the answer and how it was revealed to you, you feel a little stupid, but you don't fault the game for it. And like I said, there are some puzzles where you feel they could have worded the question better, and you're still confused on how you got the answer. But for me, the puzzles in this game are tons of fun, and even playing them again and trying out their strategies, and watching others solve them for the first time, makes me appreciate the series and the creators a lot more. They clearly wanted to make sure that each puzzle was hard, yet fun to solve. And for the first game, they've done a good job. Now, one complaint I do hear people give in the first game is that, outside of a few puzzles, most of them really had nothing to do with the story, and they seem more random. And I'll admit, if you're going for 100% and you're more of a story kind of guy, then the puzzles can serve as a distraction to you wanting to get on with the game itself. Which is why I do these games as walkthroughs first, so it doesn't feel like I'm wasting a lot of time by doing this blind. And even if you're not going for 100%, you still need to solve a certain amount of puzzles if you want to make it through the game. So I can see the puzzles in this game might throw some people off, and to be honest, if you're not going for 100%, then I think that also presents a different kind of problem the Layton series tends to have, but I'll get into that in the next 2 games. Overall, the core main gameplay and puzzles are still presentable for the first game. They're still responsive, and the puzzles are still fun to think about and solve, even after you've solved them the first time. Although I would recommend that you take a long break before replaying the games again, because, again, unless you don't solve all the puzzles, then playing this game and knowing all the answers, you might feel bored playing through these games again just for the story. Anyway, for the puzzles and the gameplay itself, I give it an 8 out of 10. The Professor Layton series not only has engaging storytelling, but with any series, especially a story-heavy series like this, you need the right kind of music to make the story and settings feel alive, and this game excels at that. This series is known for having great music, and the first game is no exception. Pretty much every piece still hits home, and is still a blessing to listen to, even on its own. From the calming title screen to the kick-ass action feel of Layton's theme, the music just invites you to a new world that you want to stay and explore around. Each piece brings a certain kind of emotion out of you that fits with a certain scene or situation. For example, you have two pieces when you go around St. Mystere. You have the main theme for the first 5 chapters. It's calming enough to where you feel this town is normal, but still leaves a certain mystery that makes you think differently while you start gathering more information. Then once chapter 6 starts, the music starts to up the tempo to a faster pace, and you feel that you're getting closer to solving the secret of this village. Or how about when you finally enter the park? The score gives that feeling of a typical fairground, but also captures that loneliness feel when you walk around, and you notice it's been abandoned for quite some time. Even the famous puzzle theme captures that little calming notion of you figuring out the question and coming up with an answer, almost like a game show type vibe. And once you get frustrated on some puzzles, that theme will soon be in your nightmares. At least, that's how I felt whenever I played this game. There isn't a single piece from this track that I thought was weak or not needed. I still hum to all of the soundtrack in this game, and even in the later series as well. Seriously, whoever plays that accordion in the background will make Weird Al shed plenty of tears. With that, I'm giving the score to Professor Layton a 10 out of 10. Now you may be wondering why I'm putting minigames in a separate category, and the main reason for it is just more on how people played the Professor Layton games. If you're the kind of person that wants to play it more for the stories rather than the puzzles, then chances are you're not going to get a chance to play the minigames because in order to beat/play the minigames, you need to solve pretty much every single puzzle in order to get to a certain level or get a certain item for that said minigame. But if you're the kind of person that's a completionist, then you will be able to try out the minigames. Plus the minigames do get different as the games go on, and since not many people, or at least not any reviewers that I know of, talk about them that much, I figured I'd go ahead and give my thoughts on the minigames. These minigames will be given to you as the gameplay goes on. You'll unlock a minigame mostly by talking to a certain character that has the item for you to start the minigame. Sometimes you're given a minigame after completing a puzzle. In Curious Village we have 3 minigames, and by minigames I mean just pieces you can collect and do something with it. Yeah, the minigames are really lackluster in this game. They're not really much games, compared to later minigames in the series, that is. These 3 minigames are just too simple. For example, in the Robot Dog minigame, all you have to do is collect all the parts to assemble the dog, and that's it. You don't have to worry about placing them in the right spot, as the game does it for you once you click on a piece. All you have to do is just name the dog. I mean, for someone that's playing the game for the first time will find it cool, and learning that the dog does help you find hint coins and hidden puzzles, it is a nice little bonus in of itself. But this is a prime example of a minigame that's not really a minigame. The minigame is somewhat of a minigame. You're given a piece of furniture and you have a choice of giving it to either Layton or Luke. Your task is to make sure you give the right item to the right character. It takes some guessing work, but to be fair, the game does help you by having Layton and Luke give you their opinion on an item they've just received. Sometimes it's made clear on what they like, but there are a few times where they'll both like an item, or they'll give a vague enough opinion that you'll end up second-guessing yourself, and you'll just have to think who would benefit from the item based on what you know of their characteristics. In all honesty, after examining the minigame in more detail, I've grown to respect and think it's a good enough minigame. Finally, we have the painting minigame. Probably the only one of the 3 that feels like a minigame. Your task is to have 20 pieces of a painting scrap and put it together in a jigsaw puzzle-like to make a picture. What picture are you making, you ask? Well, you'll just have to find that out for yourself. As a standard jigsaw puzzle goes, it controls just fine. Although it is a bit annoying to have a piece go back down from the bottom, or try to make sure you don't accidentally remove a piece from the painting, but I quite like this minigame. So there you have it, all 3 minigames, and in my opinion, these minigames were probably fun and good at the time, but they've definitely been outshined by the minigames in the later series. But that's not to say these minigames are bad, just lackluster when looking at them again. I'll give the minigames a 5 out of 10.
Well, one must always put a lady's needs first. That's what a gentleman does.
While Professor Layton and the Curious Village may be simple compared to the later games, there's no doubt that this game really helped kickstart the series and the puzzle mania as a whole. From the colorful and well thought out characters, to great art style, fantastic music, simple but effective gameplay, there is a reason why this series continues to have a growing fan base. Coming from someone that doesn't play too many brain teaser puzzle games, I still enjoy Curious Village quite enough that I don't mind coming back to this game from time to time. If only to play it for the story, but still. There's something charming to this game that's still present 15 years later. Man, I feel old. Now, as I stated before, if you're not a puzzle fan at all, then at the very least you should watch the game for the story if you like a good mystery story. And even if you're not a fan of the puzzles, it's still nice to know that you don't have to play all of the puzzles to get to the ending. But if you do love puzzles and a good mystery story game, then I definitely recommend giving the Professor Layton series a shot, starting with the one that started it all. As for me, I'm going to give Professor Layton and the Curious Village a 7 out of 10 for a good game. It might have been outshined by the later games, but without this and the warm reaction it received upon release, we would never have the Layton series as we know them to this day. So that'll about do it for my, well, actually second game review, but certainly the first I've done in a long time. Let me know what you fine ladies and gentlemen thought of my review down below. What were some things you agreed or disagreed with me? Was there anything you thought I should have covered more? And what would you like to see me talk about for the other games in the series? As I also have something to say with Diabolical Box and Unwound Future. Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you got any type of movies or shows for me to review, list them in the comments below. Like and subscribe for more stuff. Check out my gaming channel where I've done 2 playthroughs of Curious Village. One with no commentary, and one with commentary where I had some guests with me. And I also play other games too. And don't forget to check out mine and OTPO's co-op channel, Review Bros, where we review movie and TV shows together. But, until then, this has been Sakura the Diesel saying thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next review. Whenever I get around to that. But until then, take care. Bye.